Joining us now, former White House aide Cliff Sims. His new book, Team of Vipers, My 500 Extraordinary Days in the Trump White House. Also with us, attorney Mark Zaid, who specializes in national security law. Yesterday, they filed a lawsuit in federal court against the president in his official capacity, alleging that he used his campaign organization to improperly seek retribution against former employees and keep them from invoking their First Amendment rights. This is the first lawsuit from a former staffer to allege that the president is trying to circumvent standard practices about ex-employees who use unclassified information in their books. Welcome to you both, Cliff. So, first of all, set the scene legally for us. I mean, did you sign an NDA? Did you make a promise that you wouldn't talk about the things you wrote about? Where do we stand?
Well, as I say in the lawsuit, I don't remember, but we're operating under the assumption that I did sign the same thing that Corey Lewandowski did, Dave Bossie did, or that Sean Spicer did, all of whom have written books. But we got an arbitration claim against us, and Mark can walk through a little bit more of the legal stuff. But, you know, ultimately, I'm probably the least litigious person that you could possibly imagine. I've never sued anybody in my life, but I got backed into a corner. And, you know, one of the themes of my book is about how Donald Trump's relationship with Congress, the way he kind of steamrolled weak-willed members of Congress. He doesn't respond to weakness, and ultimately, I just don't like bullies. And so I wasn't going to allow myself to be bullied.
Hey, Mark, you're an accomplished lawyer. We know all that, but let's pretend we're on the subway in between stops. Explain what this legal suit is before we get to the next stop.
Sure. Well, it's the easy part. Federal employees, as any American, have a First Amendment right to publish unclassified information. That's the only restriction that is imposed upon them. Nothing classified. There's nothing classified in the book, of course. Cliff didn't have official access to classified information. It's all about his 500 days in the White House. And this is nothing but a subterfuge effort by the Trump White House to use the Trump campaign, as it's done before, to try and silence Cliff and also intimidate anyone else who might come after him. And it's not going to be permitted to occur. And that's why we're pursuing the lawsuit, and that will include trying to depose Donald Trump himself in both proceedings.
So, Cliff, in the lawsuit, you accuse the president of seeking to, quote, unlawfully penalize you. You talk about retribution. What beyond a tweet, perhaps, has he done in terms of retribution to you?
Well, that may be a better question for Mark. He can get into more of the legal side of this, but there has been an arbitration claim filed against me.
So, Mark, what are we talking about here? Have you heard directly from the White House? Has Cliff been threatened specifically, or what are we talking about here?
No, it's the initiation of the arbitration claim, which the campaign leaked last week to a few select media outlets. And that arbitration claim is very similar to a lawsuit, the way the process works nowadays. Cliff is facing possible monetary penalties of who knows how much money, as well as being held silent. I mean, this arbitration claim actually demands return of documentation that Cliff created as a federal employee. I mean, let that sink in. The private entity campaign is telling Cliff that he has to return government documents to it. I mean, this is the White House using the campaign as its tool to try and stifle and silence former federal employees.
Susan Page.
You know, Cliff, the president we know is a fan of non-disclosure agreements as a business executive and as a candidate and as president. But I wonder, it's a pretty leaky place, both the Trump campaign and the Trump White House. And is there information, important information, that we're not hearing about because employees of either the campaign or the White House signed NDAs and are afraid to talk about them?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, my gut instinct would probably be perhaps, yeah. But ultimately, as a White House employee, you know, I served Donald Trump. I served Donald Trump faithfully. But ultimately, I worked for the American people. And I do not lose my First Amendment right just because I worked in a particular White House or another. And so I just felt like that it was important when I had an opportunity to stand up. I mean, we like to teach our kids that when you're being bullied, that you need to stand up. And And so I just wasn't going to cower in a corner about this. And so I wanted to be the one who was willing to stand up and say that this isn't right.
Well, the New York Times' Maggie Haberman says that this suit gets really at the heart at what the president has attempted to be simultaneously over the last 2 years, both a private citizen and the holder of the highest office in the land. Mark Zaid, Cliff Sims, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Susan Page, thank you as well. And coming up, lawmakers reach a deal to avert another government shutdown at the end of the week, but it's not yet official. We'll talk to one of the top negotiators, House Appropriations Committee Chair Nita Lowey. Plus, President Trump declares the end of Beto O'Rourke's presidential bid before it even begins. More from last night's battle in El Paso ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.